For this episode, I am in Saratoga Springs, and I bring friends Lisa Buhelos and Randy Ho, and they put me on the hot seat. This episode is about me, and I am excited and nervous to share this with you guys. So sit back and enjoy learning about Julius Sanchez, stage manager, videographer, photographer, Filipino-American, me. Welcome to Wear Yellow Proudly's Through Our Lens, Conversations with Asians and Asian Americans. I am your host, Julius Sanchez.
All right, guys. So we're gonna flip the script a little bit. I'm Randy. This is Lisa.
Hi.
And today we're actually gonna host the podcast and interview our normal host, Julius.
Hey, hi everybody.
Yeah,
hi.
This is Julius Sanchez. Do you want to talk about yourself and say hi to everybody?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for
Introduce
wanting
yourself
to do
to your listeners.
this. Yeah. Hi everybody. So my name is Julius Sanchez. I am I was born in the Philippines. I immigrated here when I was 8. I lived in Houston ever since. I am a stage manager, a photographer, a videographer, and so yeah, that's really where I'm at. We're currently in Saratoga Springs, New York. Lisa and I are doing a show together called The Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, and Randy is Ernesto in Don Pasquale.
Yeah. So, what got you into stage management?
Yeah,
And,
great
how
question.
How do you start in that world, I guess?
I think the thing is, I feel like similar to Lisa's story of kind of quote unquote like starting late. I feel like I very much started late too. A lot of people I feel like started when they're in high school. They're just like, oh, I don't want to be on stage, but I love being backstage. Well, it was a similar situation where I was in choir in high school, and I was also in choir in college. So I went to the University of Houston, and when I was in college, of course, in the same music school, they were also doing opera, and so my friends were just like, "Hey, come join opera course, and I was like, "Nah, I don't want to do it. That's dumb, whatever." So they dragged me in there, kicking and screaming. That first production was Mano, and I really liked it. That was really fun. And so by the end of that production, I was like, when's the next one? And that second production was La Rondine. And I had like a little bit more to do with that production too. And so that production finished, and I was like, when's the next one? That third production did not have a chorus. However, it did have an opening for an assistant stage manager. And so I said, I don't know what that is, but I'll do it. It was so chaotic. As soon as you put the headset on, it was so much happening, so many moving pieces, so many calls, so many standbys, a lot of things just happening over comms and around you. It was so overwhelming, but I really loved it. And so that next season in school, I started calling shows. My first show was The Crucible. And so, yeah, I just really, really, really enjoyed doing it. And so I started freelancing, and here I am in the presence of you guys and to be able to call our show, which is really exciting.
I know that from the outsider perspective here, it's so
Yes.
cool to like see how organized you are with everything and like being on top of it, especially because you are primarily in the opera world. And so like, what's it like being in the musical now? Like This is music theater. It's definitely different, but not crazy different, right?
Yeah. Well, I've been saying this a lot, is that I love doing musicals primarily in opera companies because I love the rehearsal process of opera companies, and I just, by design, I'm just so used to it. But I love doing musicals just because they're just way heavier in terms of like the tech side of things. It just has to be. And so yeah, I think I have like about like 300 like cues just for Gentleman's Guide alone, and then like, you know, like probably like 30 or 40 sound cues. And so it's just, and like some projection cues in there too. So it's so much fun. It's so tech heavy in terms of that. It like, again, it has to be. And so, yeah, I will say some of my favorite shows that I've been a part of, whether ASMing or calling, have been musicals in general. I still love opera. I am a diehard opera fan. I truly, truly do appreciate it. But there's something about doing musicals in an opera setting where for me, it's like the perfect storm to be able to do it, and it's such a privilege to be able to do it right now.
Oh yeah, musicals in opera companies are such like a very like niche specific
Yes.
thing too. Like what makes doing a musical at an opera company different than doing a musical with like, you know, a normal musical theater crowd?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think it's just I just love how, because I like taking blocking, and I hate the question of if you should take blocking or not, because some stage managers don't, and I totally get it. But I hate having to come up to my lighting designer and just be like, oh, I don't know when that cross is, or I don't know when this happens, because it's like, well, like, I've been in the room for the past 2-3 weeks, like, why wouldn't I know this? And so, like, also, like, a lot of the cues are visual, and so it's like, okay, this is when Monty crosses. Well, I don't know where that is. I didn't mark it. So for me, it's that. And in opera, a lot of times it gets set very early, and then you figure out intention and you figure out artistic motivation throughout. But I do believe that it's a little bit more organic when it comes to musical theater settings, and so, which is great. I thoroughly appreciate it. But I think there's a lot more changing of things and a lot more erasing and a lot more, like, you know, figuring that out right up until you get to room run and then tech and then figuring that out. But in opera, there's not as much changing. And I think, like, you know, I'm just so used to the queuing of singers, and just like the pace. I think that's what it is. It's the pacing of the room in an opera company. That's very much what I'm used to. Is like there is like an overarching thing instead of just like sitting down and just being like, okay, like now we're just slogging through this 1 3-minute passage for, like, you know, 3 hours, and that's where I'm just kind of like, oh, like it just drags. But like in opera, I feel like, yes, it sure can get that way, but still, I feel like the bigger picture is where we kind of see how it's like, and so yeah, I feel like for me, I thrive a lot more in an opera setting. So yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting that, like, both of our stage managers for the 2 productions we have going in the festival right now, Sarah's primarily in music theater.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
This is one of her first operas.
Yeah.
And then is this your first musical?
No, I've done I've done Sweeney Todd, I've done Wizard of Oz, I've done Sondheim, and a few others in there somewhere. But so you know, I feel like this is probably like my 5th, maybe my 4th even musical. I don't get to do them often, and when I do, I'm just geeking out because I'm just like, this is a really cool opportunity to do. But yeah,
this is your first time calling a show for the of this
yes,
magnitude?
actually, yeah. No, like yes and no, because Sondheim on Sondheim was also a pretty big show as well. It was like an 18-person cast, and like there's no coherency to it, just because it's like, I don't know if you guys have done it or seen it, but like it's Stephen Sondheim primarily doing videos, like it's interjections in between, and he does like he narrates throughout, and like primarily like the things in his life. It's a musical review, and so it just cuts through a lot. It just goes through a lot of his music, and it interjects in between, and so it's really pretty. There's no coherency to it. It's really great. But that was my first time working with Laura, our maestro right now, and I think that's actually got the biggest reason why I'm doing Gentleman's Guide and Sarah's doing Don Pasquale. And again, I feel like in a normal world, Sarah would be doing Gentleman's Guide, I would be doing Pasquale, just because of how our experiences align. But I think since I've worked with Laura, I think like she was just like, yeah, I'd really like to work with Julius, and so I think that's just kind of how the dominoes fell. And so I'm really grateful. I would obviously, I love your cast, and I would love to have had the opportunity to work with you guys, but yeah. But
I mean, I've watched the show twice, and I'm a little obsessed with everything. I mean, it's such a beautiful production, and like.
Yeah.
Even though like the rehearsal process for the last month for both of our shows have been like very interesting to be a part of,
Mm-hmm.
you've been like a real trooper keeping that ship afloat from like being like even though I'm across the hallway like a lot. The mall is such an interesting place to rehearse.
It
if
is.
you like,
I like it though. I really enjoy it.
The mall, really?
I mean, like, I don't know how it's like for you guys as performers, but like I think there's like a nice separation to where, okay, like if people need to just like run lines or something in the storage area or something, like we get our own restroom. We have like, again, like plenty of storage space in general. If we need to do fittings, there's like a separate area for that, and it's a very deep space to where if they do have, because like our performances here for this season it's a thrust, and so instead of having a regular proscenium space, we need the depth, and so the mall allows for that depth, because like I think like what our side of the mall was formerly a Charlotte Russe, theirs was formerly an Aeropostale, and so It's
both
very
are extremely long in terms of like
Yeah.
a rehearsal
Yeah.
space, which is like is super wonderful because we've been able to really adjust to the actual length of
Yeah.
the stage.
Yeah, I think so.
It
Oh, good.
actually
That's
is.
good.
But in most cases, you won't find that in rehearsal spaces.
No, absolutely not.
And so like you're having to like in tech restage depth and spacing
Yeah.
more so than what we've had to do
Oh, yeah.
normally.
Yeah, I don't know. I like it
Yeah.
though because it's so spacious. It's I don't know. It's really nice. There's like sectioned off parts. Again, there's like plenty of storage and so yeah, and it's like all in one space instead of like having to drive back and forth. And like we could listen to each other's rehearsals, which is really nice. There are like plenty of amenities like that are around us. Like
Oh
not
man, that weekly
not a lot.
Auntie Anne.
Yeah.
Hey, if
Yeah.
you're having a bad day, you go to Annie Ann's and everything's better.
Honestly, you don't even need to get anything from Annie Ann's. You just sit right and
just
you
smell
smell
it. Just smell it. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like there is a cinnamon
Yeah.
pretzel.
Like
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is okay. Like for people who don't understand, the Saratoga Mall that we're at, the Wilton Mall,
Yeah.
is the strangest place sometimes.
It's a very like it's not a very big or popular mall. Like the area is pretty nice and pretty big, but like in general, like the main actual mall indoor part is like it's fairly bare bones, I would say.
There's
Kind
a
of
Planet
abandoned.
Fitness inside, bro,
I always forget about
in
that.
an
Yeah.
urgent care.
and in urgent care.
But like here's the thing, again, as a stage manager, that's so convenient because it's just like okay, cool. Like well, they got her.
Oh yeah, so
it's
you're
right
just
there.
gonna go to the Planet Fitness to let out some anger whenever you're there. And
Well, but I wish I could. I will say I haven't been angry in this process. Like frustrated, sure, because like just like how things may have fallen, and like who doesn't in general.
Well, it's a crazy show. I'm surprised you haven't been frustrated more.
Well, we'll go over that in a bit, but like I
Ooh.
haven't. No, but it's we can go over it now. It's certainly been a really rewarding time, and I still stand by this is the fact that whenever I'm around people that are like-minded in terms of just grateful to be here, we're creating art, we're creating music. What more could you want?
Yeah.
Like sure, like so for those that don't know, my ASM for the show dropped out of the show like midway through and stuff, and like I think a week before tech, and then I got a new ASM, and so the next one was a little bit inexperienced, but she was very very eager, which was really wonderful, and she's been really terrific. But my thing is that I was a bit of a one-man show for like about a week, like a little bit less than that, but and so yeah, it was a lot of like late nights of just like okay, like how do we figure this out, and just like me being by myself, and so but never a day has gone by where I've been incredibly grateful. I've been very thankful of just being in the room. Every single person has been super duper supportive, and I stand by what I say when it's the people that make the festival, and every single human being has been so supportive, so encouraging, so respectful. I've never felt like anybody here has been in such a foul mood or anything, or if ever they were in like a split instance, it's just like cool, like let's just navigate that or whatever. But never a day has gone by where I had never felt grateful. And so yeah, it's been such a wonderful experience being here and being amongst you guys, and like this is our home for this this like month and a half, and like
I know.
and
I can't
Lisa
get-
and
I'm
Randy.
so obsessed with this horse painting.
I know. Our beautiful
It's-
horse is
Yeah.
behind us.
But Lisa and Randy officially don't live here. But the thing is, like,
We kind of
almost
do.
like almost every single night they're always here, and so it's such But like I think it is a testament to our friendship. It's a testament to our experiences together. And so
which is weird because it's like I oddly feel like you're my twin flame sometimes.
oh my god,
Aw.
1000%.
The
Like,
same kind of person, but like
Yeah.
it's weird because we both didn't like each other because
Oh, you didn't like me?
Yeah, we both had like we're like
Wait,
we
you
got the
didn't
same
like each
vibe.
other?
No,
we were
I gotta know-
literally
I gotta
on the
know
same
that.
like wavelengths where
Yeah.
we were both like, I don't know if this is gonna work or if this
Yeah.
is like we're gonna fight the entire
Well, right.
time.
No. I thought so too. Well, the thing is that I think it goes along with that saying of when people have similar personalities, they don't get along very well because it's just like looking in the mirror a little bit. And I think it was very much that where I'm just like, in my head, I was like, when I first met him, I was like, are we gonna get
I
along?
know, and then I remember
Yeah.
because like because we did the bingo game, right? And the funny thing is, I got the bingo first as the young artist when we did it.
Oh,
And
did
then
you?
You got the bingo at the actual show.
Yeah, and I actually, and it was your song.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was your aria. Right
It was
before.
yeah.
It was
So-
meant to be.
And so it was so for those that don't know, there was it
yeah, it was
Stars
a
of
game
Tomorrow?
of bingo where we were playing like get to know you
At our
introductions.
Stars of Tomorrow
Yeah,
concert.
Yeah, the
it
first
was-
show we did here, and
Yeah,
like I had not met Julius yet, and so
No.
but I had heard about Julius from one of my old roommate who's living with him now.
Yeah, Nathan.
And it was just so funny. Where it was like, I was told he's so similar to you, and it's because we have this.
Oh, I
shared,
didn't know
like,
this.
Love to do the dishes because it's very therapeutic for both of us.
That's so
Didn't
funny.
you come over here at like midnight?
Yes, okay.
and, like,
We
do
don't
the
need
dishes?
to reiterate this part
I
of the
will.
episode.
This is.
Okay, but like I found it like okay, but here's the thing. I found it
Distracting.
incredibly endearing. There was like a certain point where I'm just kind of like, okay, like I it was actually nice to see Randy because like I will say at this point it's weird when you're not here in our house. Like for any night that you're not here, I'm just kind of like, where are they? It's so quiet. It's so boring. You know what I mean? Because like you guys are always welcome here. You guys are always hanging out here. So it's just so when you're
Yeah,
not
at one
here,
point
I'm
I
just
had
like,
the
well,
housekeeper week.
You did.
Really?
Well, when
Yeah.
Nathan wasn't here. Yeah. And so, like, and then Randy swung by at like 12:15 a.m. and he swung by to go do the dishes. And like, it was like going into tech week or whatever it was. And it was just like, I was like tired. And I'm the one that primarily does dishes in our home because primarily for me, it's very therapeutic of just being
What are you
like,
talking about, dude? That whole thing's is a drying rack.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's
Yeah,
a
the
drying
dishwasher.
rack, and
Yeah.
people don't
The
understand it.
dishwashers,
It's a
yeah.
drying rack.
Yeah, 1000%.
Those buttons, they don't exist.
Well, because like, and also just like the dishwasher isn't like the best, and so we've just been using the dishwasher as a drying rack, anyway. But it's this whole thing where like I think in the beginning we just didn't like each other. I didn't know you didn't like me, but I was just kind of like, are we gonna get along? You know, what I
It
mean?
was more that it was caution, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, we both had and then we realized like, oh, this is gonna be fine. We're just
Yeah,
gonna mess
yeah.
around the whole time. And
Yeah,
have fun.
I think it was when you first mentioned that you had bone marrow for pho, and he was like, "Can I cook it at your place?" And for me, like, this is something that my parents have taught me is that like, don't ever like you never turn away anybody when it comes to food, or like like just anything with food in general. It's a very like sacred, not really sacred, but like very much a thing where that's everybody should be welcome to the table.
Yeah.
And so that's when Randy was just like, "Hey, is it cool if I cook at your place, like just like a tester for fun?" I'm just like, "Oh my god! Like, why would I ever turn that down?"
And especially because you come from Houston, like
yeah.
there is so much good Asian food out
my
in
God.
like
Yeah, yeah.
Texas
Oh,
in
yeah.
general.
I live right next to Chinatown. I don't know if I ever told you
Oh
this,
my-
but
no,
like,
I
I live
didn't know
next to
that.
Chinatown.
But
No.
my aunt lives in Katy.
Oh my god! Yeah, I'm
So
20
it's
minutes
just
away
like-
from there.
oh,
yeah,
yeah,
and there's a
perfect.
Chinatown right there too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah.
That's the only time I've ever driven through Katy was when I was coming
Oh,
from
yeah.
Denver to Pensacola, and I stayed
Yeah,
the
it's
night in
off of
Katy.
I-10, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
she's right by I-10 too.
Yeah. Oh, insane.
Which-
Yeah,
so-
I'm like about 10-15 minutes away from there. Like it's so close to my house.
We were so close, and yet
Insane.
so far.
Yeah, it's-
But I think you were in Sarasota at that time, though.
Probably. Yeah.
'Cause-
It's like during the winter time. Yeah.
Yeah, because you've been okay. So like you've worked here, you've worked at
Mhm.
Sarasota. Where else have you Where have your
Yeah.
adventures taken you?
So last summer I was in Glimmerglass, and then the summer before that I was at Des Moines Metro Opera, and before the pandemic, my first ever festival was Opera Neo in San Diego. That was really fun. I really enjoyed my time there. It's kind of similar to here, but like I get paid like a quarter of how much it's like same length as this season, but I got paid like like a lot less, and like the experience was really great. I stage managed all 3 shows. And
Wow.
so it was like it was Cenerentola as the first week, and then the second week it was Eugene Onegin and Callisto. And so that was in rep. And so I had 1 AD for each show, but I didn't have an ASM. And so
So it's just you.
So you were
Yeah,
just
just
kind of
me.
running
Yeah.
the whole
yeah,
show.
yeah.
there.
And so that was really fun. And so it was like I had to like go about. So obviously we had like 3 sessions a day. I bounced between the shows because they were all rehearsing in rep. So that was really fun.
But like watching how you run the ship with Gentleman's Guide has been really cool because like
Yeah.
Thanks.
you're so organized when it comes to like
Thanks.
waiting and being good about sending a go. And
Yeah.
like for me that's like a really interesting thing because like as like a performer,
Yeah.
I'm always told don't you dare step on that stage without a go.
Yeah, I always told people is that let the stage manager take the blame for it because for those who don't know, in opera we cue singers, and so it's like stand by for like right there for their entrance and then go. For a lot of theater they just call them themselves, for ballet, for dance, for musical theater, for straight plays and everything. But for opera we primarily just give them an actual cue to go on, and so
It's also just because like for opera, the music is so important.
Yes.
And so even if you come on early and the timing is wrong, let the SMs take the blame.
Yes, 100%.
Because it's like you may know your music.
Yeah.
But if your SM says wait, it's solely because there's an effect with lighting, staging, and just trust them.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's so important for young singers to understand is they're there to have your back.
Yeah. That's what I always tell younger ASMs is like, let us have the blame for that. We're not really going to get in trouble. Because I will just talk to you and be, like, I will talk to my ASMs and be like, hey, where are you sending them? Here. Okay, cool. Let's move it back like 2 measures or something. And then and that's it. That's the conversation. There's no crudiness about it. Like, there's also this understanding between being in the room versus being in the actual space that you have to adjust. And that's something that we talked about is that and Grace, our new ASM, bless her, she's doing a great job, but also it's hard. It's so hard. And like for anybody for any space, whatever, it's so hard to adjust from the room to the actual performance venue because in normal stages you have the wing space that you have to account for. So that's like an extra 5 to 10 feet maybe of like having to also travel. Here in our venue, you have to cross VOMs, and it's like, again, I would argue even an extra 10 to 20
they're pretty
feet.
Long.
They're long. They're so
long.
Yeah.
There.
And so it's just, I will say she adjusted really well.
Her girl's running like.
Yeah, she is running. Homie has a hard track. It's like a lot of back and forth. Every single time she moves, it's like, like down a flight of stairs and then up a flight of stairs, and then she has to track back, and it's the same thing. I don't envy her track at all. She's doing super duper well. There was a certain point where she was like, yeah, I'd like to take over the entrances because that will be her duty, and that's the one thing that we talked about. And I'm just like, I like you because you're taking initiative, and you've never done this before. And when I first started cueing singers, it's daunting because I'm just kind of I'm good. It's just like, okay, well, how, are they gonna take my cue, or are they gonna trust me to do? Because it's a trusting, it's a huge trusting, especially for somebody that came in 2 weeks later in the process.
She's been a trooper since day one, though. She's been ready to go.
Yeah. Oh, it's
eager.
Oh my God, I can't thank her enough because I feel like she's just like saving my butt.
Especially for your positions backstage, like I feel like you learn more by doing.
Oh, 100%.
And like your job is so much like you have to do it. It's a trial by fire, and if you mess up, that's okay.
Yeah, and
get it better the next time.
Oh, it's trial. It's a lot of trial and error.
100%. Yeah.
Unlike our jobs where it's like you mess it up once, you may not get a second chance.
Right. It's very much going into tech, I will say, that's when we start to, I think, practice what we do. Because, like, of course, when we get into real space, it's like, okay, like, now I'm starting to understand how much time I really need on the ASM's track. And then for my track, it's like, okay, this is when they want the sound cue, or this is when they want the light cue. Yeah. I will say now it's the better time for me where it's like, okay, cool, I'm now...
it's your last show coming up this weekend. So it's like it's smooth sailing.
We have 2 more. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, we get 4 shows.
Oh, you do get 4 shows. I forgot.
Yeah. And so it's very much this, like, cool, I'm in chill mode because now maybe we just go into archiving, we just go into, like whatever else, we just clean up things, whatever we need to. We're starting to clean up the mall and stuff. And so, it's a lot less like 12, 14 hour days, and then just being like, okay, like maybe 6 hours, like here and there.
Yeah. So you're in charge of archiving. What does that entail?
Ooh, great question. So in terms of paperwork, it's like just having final drafts. I don't know if you ever noticed, if you ever take a peek at it, but the scene shift assignments that are posted on the walls, it says VE, VD, VB. So that means it's version B or version A or version whatever the hell. And so it means that it tells me, hey, this is the version that we're at. And so like the first version is always the just preliminary version. And then of course we start A, B, C, D. I think we're on like version D or E of the scene shift assignment, which I totally get. And of course it has the date on there too. But we go into version final. That's the goal, is that like by the time you're archiving, you should be on the final version. And then the stage manager just checks everything. So like regularly for an ASM, what they have to do is the props list, the props run, any spike maps, So like you
Yeah.
know those mics, sorry, those spikes that we have on the floor and stuff.
Yeah.
Regularly in we're not doing this for our show, but they have to map out every single spike,
Oh,
which
wow.
means that so we have to have like layout two two lengths of tape measures, and we have to tape out, okay, this is this particular spike is upstage 8.5 feet and then stage left.
So you're just
6
like
feet.
setting a battleship
Yeah.
with spike marks.
No, that's a very
Literally
good point.
battleship.
No, very much so. And so with that said, it's very much the point of all that is when somebody else wants to do the production later,
So
they can recreate it again. And so
they
like
can do the exact same production.
they can do the exact same production, exactly. And so it's very much like making
Remount.
sure, very much so. So like when somebody does want to remount whatever the production
Nice.
is,
Oh,
not
But like that's such a cool
Yeah.
way to think about it is like
Yeah.
if
Oh,
you
yeah.
wanted to remount it at any
Yeah,
point, you
it's-
have all
Yeah.
the paperwork to
Yeah.
just grab and go.
yeah, it's the funny thing is like when you start to judge the ASMs previously of just like, oh, why did they do it like this, or like why did they write this like this, is like this is so nerdy and kind of going into it. But like when we
That's
write
so
on
cool.
our props run sheet, we write our handoff or catch. So if it's a handoff, we hand off to the performer. If it's a catch, we catch from the performer. But there were some like language where it's like receive. It's like, okay, who's receiving? Am I receiving or are they receiving? So it's like, it's a lot of like language. It's a lot of just like understanding how, again, like we talked about this earlier too, is making sure it's bus proof, where if somebody picks up your track and does it,
Yeah.
they will know and they can see what's going on. And so it's very meticulous. Anytime that you guys ever pick up a prop, anytime you guys ever put on a single like piece of wardrobe, that gets documented.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's every detail.
Every single thing. And so it's like
Yeah.
obviously things that you don't necessarily have to think about, but it does have to translate to props people, to wardrobe people. And so, it's very much that, where it's like the small tedious things where it's like, okay, like what are they wearing and what do they have in
Yeah.
their hands? And so obviously it's part of the storytelling,
yeah,
but it has to
like-
be communicated to the people that were not in the room the entire time.
Yeah, especially with opera companies and the way that we run, where we're remounting productions from other opera companies.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
Especially the regional world, where
Yeah. All
Pensacola,
the time.
like we grabbed a production that we saw at Virginia Opera
Yeah.
when we were doing Carousel. So like we
Yeah.
remounted that production, and it was cool to see that like we could pull off the exact same staging with the
Yeah.
same set, and recreate that same experience with the original director for
Mhm.
that.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so it was like
exactly.
it was really important, but it was also important for us to see how to adapt our stage
Yes,
to what
yes.
they had.
Of course, you will change however you need to, but yes, 100%. It's like, okay, cool. Like now this person picks up this prop. It's like, oh, cool. Like it says that here. Obviously, yes. Yeah. So
and then with our production, it was like the last time they did it was 2008, and so the
Oh,
world
insane.
has completely changed.
wow.
yeah,
From
100%.
From 2008 to like
update that.
2023,
Yeah.
and so like none of the call sheets were updated. The cues were wrong, and we had to,
Oh,
like,
sure. Yeah,
rebuild
yeah.
a lot of the show.
Yeah. That I
really.
will say it gets pretty like frustrating. Like initially when you first start to do the things, it's like cool. It's nice to go off of it, but you will have to generate your own paperwork to build off of that, because obviously you can't fully remount the production the same way that it was before, and the next people won't remount it the same way either.
Yeah. So Lisa had a very good question
I had
about.
a very, very, very good question
What's up?
because I'm just full of great questions, I guess. So
This is also being recorded at like
2:11
11 in the morning.
2 in the morning, guys.
Yeah.
We are
Welcome to
Welcome
Wear
to the
Yellow
Gremlin
Proudly
Hours.
Through Our Lens late night edition.
Late
Correct.
night. This is
Yeah.
the late show. with
Right.
Randy, Lisa, and Julius.
Absolutely.
But so honestly, before this show, I've never really paid attention to what a stage manager does. I just kind of, I'm just kind of doing my thing, which I think on my part is not really, a very considerate thing. Like, you should understand what everybody in the room does and appreciate it.
Yeah.
And really with this show, you can't help but notice what you guys do because there's just so much happening.
Yeah.
And so I want to know exactly what are you really in charge of? What do you guys do? And then specifically in this show, what do you have to do in this show that maybe you wouldn't have to normally do?
Yeah. What a great question. Thank you for that. So a stage manager is primarily, I've been saying this the past several weeks, but I truly believe that the stage manager is the pillar of safety and integrity in the room. And what that means is, of course, is like, whether it comes to like physical safety, where, spatially, if somebody gets hurt, somebody gets, gets like actually like physically hurt or like damages anything in the room, we have first aid kits, we have incident reports in the room as well. If there's an intimacy issue or problem or anything, that's also we figure that out as well. We navigate that. Of course, we have intimacy coordinators regularly in the room as well, or fight coordinators, depending on how the show is like, especially. And so they're added. They're very much a layer of that. However, there is some Venn diagrammed area where stage managers, when it comes into shows, are in charge of that, because like the fight and intimacy coordinators are not in the shows when we're actually going to performances. And so that's something that, we assign a fight captain, or we assign a dance captain. Actually, Lisa's a dance captain in our show.
I did it.
Yeah, you are doing it.
I'm a professional dancer now.
And so it's very much like making sure that in the integrity side of things, of course, like, yes, of course, that it's safe, but also that we're staying true to how the director wanted it, how it's supposed to be, just to make sure that, of course, like in terms of like tech, lighting, and just like making sure like that everything is safely done the way that it is, that we're not continuing to add things, or we're not continuing to detract from things. It's just making sure that the show is exactly how it was set from performance 1 to its final performance. And so just making sure that that's being done. And so just like, even checking in, of course, like again, like we also have ADs, assistant directors, to help facilitate that, or just like, hey, make sure that when you're doing this cross, it's the same way that you've been doing it like before, like you don't point or do certain things when you're not supposed to, or whatever, and stuff like that. And so and then making sure that I'm communicating via reports. So we send reports out every single day, whether it be rehearsal reports or performance reports, obviously depending on what part of this what stage we are in the production, but we send reports for every single day that we have those, and we communicate with every single department. So whether it be sound or lighting or scenic or music or administration, projections, whatever it may be, we send reports of just like, okay, like these are the things that happen in rehearsal, like these are things that we need. Something as small and arbitrary as, oh, they take a knee during this part of the show. And that's an important thing because one, it's a laundering issue, as in making sure that they understand, hey, like they are, having a bit more of an active staging, like, oh, like Monty has to roll around on stage. It's like, okay, well, we have to make sure that we bleach the shit out of his
oh man, I feel so bad, because I definitely am one of those performers that maybe adds something different every now and then.
Oh, sure.
That's not original. Like, I definitely am, like, kneeling for me in the show was something that was added right after final dress, for our show. And so now I feel bad for my ass.
No, but like it's stuff like that where it's like, we document it, or we try to we tell costumes stuff like that, because it's like, okay, well, your costume's really tight, or like it won't have any give when it comes to doing certain things. We ask about knee pads all the time, to just make sure that you have them available for you when we're actually performing. So like for Max, he has to have knee pads because he's like crawling on the floor.
Always.
Yeah, he's like every time.
Like day one, I was like, do you want knee pads? He was like, no, I'm okay. Like 2 seconds later, he was like, you know what? I'm going to need them. And he's always been like, he has been knee padded up every single time. So we have that, making
As you
sure.
should.
Right. And then like
if that's like Act 4 Bohème.
Yeah.
He's like,
yeah.
People who don't ask for knee pads, I'm like,
You're gonna really
you are crawling, my guy.
Let's just ask for them.
Yeah,
just in case.
yeah. There are also times when, we are throwing a prop, or we're like, like kind of like the sword. I was like, hey, like we're throwing the book and we're throwing the sword. There was like this conversation about the newspapers, how we're gonna double them and everything. And you guys have been brilliant about it, and we never even talked to you about it. Actually, it's like, of course, like at the top of our show, there are 11 newspapers that spell out A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. And coincidentally, obviously, we have 11 cast members as well. And so they all hold up this newspaper is spelling out A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. And so at the end of the show, however, we also need another 7 newspapers to be able to make sure that we like kind of with continuity in some ways. So just like, like we end it and then we just kind of like go back to our seats and whatever. And so we were talking about it and I was like, is it possible to not necessarily add 7 newspapers, but have the backside of them be available to be blank? And so, instead of having to add 7 new newspapers, we can just have like we can just flip to the other side, which you guys have done perfectly well, obviously. And so it's like stuff like that.
It's a really cool effect. It's really the open the book and close the book effect.
Yeah. And so it's like very small, again, like such arbitrary, like small things like that, where it's like, okay, like we have to think about this way, or we have to think about this, or like would costumes want to know this, or would wigs want to know this, or hey, they're taking off the hat, so we can't pin the hat during this part and stuff like that. And so we're presetting some of the props in the sittables. That was a conversation too, where where Scenic didn't know, our technical director didn't know that they were supposed to have storage space. I think it just wasn't communicated, and so that was like, okay, well now we got to figure that out and stuff. And so it's stuff like that where it's making sure that we're all on the same page, and by the time they see it during tech or even by room run, they're not caught off guard by certain things. And so it's a lot of communication, it's a lot of safety, it's a lot of just making sure that the show continues on the way that it was designed to be by all designers, by directors. And so
like we've talked about how crazy the show is. It's you're doing the job of like 5 people in that show. Is that like, I'm guessing that's not usually how it would be with a show like this.
For something like this, especially with the queuing, I think that's like the hard part, is the fact that again, since we're in an opera house, we do queue even though it's a musical. Regularly we would have one ASM specifically in charge of props, and then another ASM specifically in charge of wardrobe, as in wardrobe tracking and props tracking, and again communicating that via paperwork to make sure that the props crew and the wardrobe crew and wigs and makeup all know and have a handle on what's going on.
Let's go ahead and shift gears a little bit.
Yes.
Let's get to know you. Let's talk about why you started this podcast.
Yeah. So I don't think anybody from Where Yellow Proudly knew this, but I hated podcasts. I hated podcasts for a while. And honestly, until recently, I was not exactly a big fan of podcasts. And I will say, along with like alcohol in general, I don't think, I hate the mentality of I hate podcasts, period, because that just means that you haven't found one that you like for yourself. Just kind of like when people say, oh, I hate vodka or I hate whiskey. It's like, well, you probably haven't found one that you specifically like for yourself, kind of like with beer, wine, whatever else. It's so, I feel like it's so ignorant to close your mind off to all of XYZ just because. Relate to
you right there, because I love podcasts.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is that like I started to, but that's like what I didn't realize. I'm just like, cool, like what podcasts can I delve into? And I started to like really listen to podcasts and like, okay, like what do I want? What do I not want? How do I want this to be structured? And I started to really learn how they're like, and I'm just like, okay, like this is a lot.
Do you have anything that you're currently like into?
I like the Vulnerable podcast with Christy Carlson Romano, and she is
she was choice.
She's Kim Possible. She was Ren Stevens, and it's cool because like and so I like
my original like woman, like girl power.
Right. And so it was nice. It's nice because like she brings on a lot of like former child actors and stuff, and so obviously it's something that I cannot relate to. But it was really cool, just like kind of like going through like a bit of trauma bonding together and stuff, and just like going through that. But it's kind of, I think, that's the most similar to how I kind of structure how this podcast is like. I mean, like we're on episode, like still less than 5 right now, but I think that's kind of how mentally that's how I've been doing it. But yeah, I think like we've been under like a reconstruction with Wear Yellow Proudly, and like we did like a post for every single day of AAPI month and stuff, and we try to do something for Lunar New Year as well. And so with how the pandemic was like, Wear Yellow Proudly was born out of that, from the xenophobia, from the hashtag South Asian hate and stuff. And so Alice Chung and I, Alice Chung and I were both doing this online project, and like via like some mutual friends that we've known and stuff. And so it's called Lean On Me with Omni Arts Foundation. And so we were doing that, and we finished, and she it was like a huge labor of love, and it was really, really great. But then when we finished it, she messaged me. She was just like, "Hey, what are you doing after this?" Or like, "Would you be down for this thing that I'm also doing?" And I'm just like, "Sure, I'm down." And so like she talked to me about it. It's called Wear Your Little Proudly, and again, she told me about it. It's like primarily born out of Asians that like that want to take a stand against this, and it's just like, hey, like this is what we do, this is who we are, this is what we look like, and we're not going anywhere about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, yeah, and so like giving us further a platform, and so we've been doing a lot of like online content since then. And so at first I was like a little bit hesitant. I wasn't really sure of like being a part of it. I mean, initially, yes, I was really grateful of being a part of it, and I didn't know my role in it as well, or I didn't know how I fit into it. Honestly, it's because I never really cared so much about my Asian roots, and I think that's the problem. Was that what I appreciate about Wear Yellow Proudly is the fact that it helped me develop this appreciation from where I come from again, like even to the point where like what I look like. We were talking about this earlier, is that I used to hate anime for a while, and I didn't know why, and I would just make fun of friends that would just that would consume anime. But later on, I realized that I was projecting this hatred toward them because of the fact that it at times, yes, anime can be very much a caricature of Asian culture, or just like Asians in general.
But I gotta know. Hold on, before we keep going. Were you like a K-drama fan?
No, I never.
Because like for me, that it always goes in two boats. Where it's like, if you don't like anime, you watch K-drama.
No, never. No,
but like I have never watched. I don't really watch K-dramas. I am a big anime fan though.
Okay, like I've been starting to slowly appreciate it better. Like my best friend is like showing me some things here and there. I've been slowly starting to get into Studio Ghibli as well. That's been really nice.
God, I love that.
So Studio Ghibli's been really great.
Yeah.
It's just been so therapeutic, just like watching it. So it's been really nice.
Yeah.
My girlfriend's actually been the one that's been like introducing me to it. But yeah, and so it's like stuff like that where I just would shed a lot of my Asian identity.
Yeah.
And
But do you also think it's like a part of like the assimilation into American culture?
yes, 1000%. Yeah, like it's been very much the same, especially like since immigrating, of making sure that I was assimilated well enough, and making sure that I am American. Yes, I do belong here. That a huge part of me was just like, oh no, like that I would just shed a lot of my Asian identity. And it wasn't I honestly do believe that it wasn't until Wear Yellow Proudly for me where it's like, I want to learn more about my culture. I think it's time. It's time for me to understand, and also to just understand that like it's not just me that's experiencing that. And of course, in what we do too, it's also, what's nice is that like with Wear Yellow Proudly, it's like it's also this understanding that when you look around a room, a lot of times you're the only one that's bearing the flag.
Yeah.
And so, and it's not like this hatred or upsetness about it, but it's like, it's, hey, take pride in that.
Yeah.
Like
well,
you're doing
especially
with
in your
that
community in the stage manager world, like
oh my god,
it's rare that I do meet an Asian American stage manager
and a male stage manager at that too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, especially
Yeah.
Now that I think about that, but it's like
I actually never thought about that.
yeah, isn't that crazy? Like I think that I'm like, I feel like such a huge anomaly because like as a male Asian stage manager,
What exactly about stage managing for you?
was like stage management, like what appealed for to
Yeah,
me?
like what exactly about like the backstage element?
I think it's like I think like a huge part of me is just like, oh, I get to control the thing, like not like, oh, like I'm controlling in that way, but I get to make it happen in that way. And so like again, like the lights, the curtains, the just like whatever's happening on stage, for me that's the chaos that I like to thrive in. I like to think that stage manager, I feel like how you get to really meet your stage manager is if they're good in chaotic situations. Because it's so easy. I mean, like with anything, it's so easy to just be like, cool, you're really good at what you do. Like, this is really awesome. Whatever. When things are going fine. Yeah. But when things are going wrong and when shit hits the fan, you want somebody there, especially a stage manager in your show, to where they can adjust on the fly. Yeah. They have to be able to.
What about this podcast was so special and important to like create it for you, like as an outlet?
Yeah. Again, it was like part of the rebranding and the reconstruction in general of Wear Yellow Proudly. And Alice Chung and Helen Huang and I like all met, and Helen was like, I think like it'd be great to start a podcast, and I think it'd be really cool if you hosted it. And I was just like, oh, cool. And so it was like, I think it was like that. Like the thing is that I've always wanted to start a podcast in general. I just didn't know what. My friends and I also had this idea for another podcast, but I thought this would be a really cool pilot of just of doing this and again having that like furthering the platform and just starting conversations and having something that's like more regular. And it became this like really cool project that right now, I mean, it's like, it's still in its infancy. It's like literally month number 3. But in general, it's been really fun. It's always so fun to get to know everybody that has been on it so far.
In your own words, like what does Wear Yellow Proudly mean for you?
For me, it's been this understanding of where I come from and where I would like to take myself in that culture. I actually have like in our Google Drive where it's like Julius's half-baked ideas of just like, okay, like I'd like to kickstart these projects of, like, because I really want to delve into the videography side of things about it. And so I love documentary making. And so I've made like smaller like talking heads things here and there, but never anything big. And I want to achieve, or I want to dive into bigger things. And so, yeah, it's like just like, primarily diving into into specific diasporas and diving into the Houston culture as well. Like such things like that. That's where I want to be able to.
I don't know if that's half-baked. You sound like you've thought this run through.
A lot. I've definitely thought about it a lot. I think it's like maybe like a little bit of funding, but definitely like, okay, like how do I want to structure certain things? It's, that's what I want to do with Wear Yellow Proudly on my end of things. It's very much.
Yeah, what kind of like documentary like, style things would you want to do?
So it's one of them is I wanted to just kind of like dive into primarily Filipino moms. I like a lot. There's like a running joke, not even a joke. It's just a running thing. Like a lot of Filipino moms are nurses, or just like working.
You know what?
The
I already
medical field
told
in
that
general.
my joke, but it's like 1 foot at a time was the Vietnamese idea of like immigrating and getting adjusted into the world here.
Right. And so, it's just very much this. I think just like wanting to kind of dive into that in terms of just like Filipino moms and just kind of talk about that and just like highlight them for a little bit, but also have this one where I want to go into. I feel like there's not a lot of maybe I just haven't done a lot of research on it, but there's not a lot of articles or media in general when it comes to the Houston diaspora or like Houston Asian diaspora, and I'd love to really dive into that. I think it'd be really cool because like
I feel like there's a lot of like Asian culture in Houston.
So much. It's
I will. It's massive.
Yeah, and it's like 4th largest city. I mean, like the thing is, like it's behind New York, LA, Chicago, and then Houston. So it's so Houston's the 4th largest city in the U.S. and it's huge. And what I love about it is it's so diverse. Whenever I come into anywhere, there's not somebody that looks like me or looks like the person next to them either. My girlfriend was just like, Houston's really diverse, and so it's really nice because like there's just so many people that are just from different cultures, and like there's like different parts, different neighborhoods that I mean, like as New York, as LA, as like as Denver is and everything as well.
But what is your so coming to America as like a very young child? What was that journey like for you all the way to reaching to your identity now?
I was 8.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I was 8. And I was like, I think going into 3rd grade at the time, and so we immigrated in 2002, and I don't recall so much of it. I think like the biggest thing that I recalled was like 2 or 3 things. Was we went to go get pho the first day. Like that was like my first meal being here. We went to
pho.
Yeah,
way to full circle this conversation.
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, but I mean, honestly, it was very much like, okay, like maybe this isn't going to be so different. I will say, immigrating wasn't it was a big culture shock. Obviously, like the people were bigger, like just like like they're way taller.
Oh yeah.
Asians are tiny.
Wrong. Have you gone back?
Yeah, I gone back a couple of times. So I went back 2016 and 2019, and so it's really cool because like my cousins who are like when I was like, they were 2 or 3 years old when I left, were like 17, 18. So we went like clubbing, we hung out and stuff. So it was obviously like a huge dichotomy of like what we did. And so they're really cool. My cousins are also bodybuilders too. And so they are like both of the three of us combined, all into one guy.
That's fun.
And so yeah, like he goes like he competes in bodybuilding.
That's amazing.
So, that's crazy.
Yeah. And the other one is
and also
like
intimidating as shit for me and you.
Yeah. And so and they're taller than I am too. And so and they're like probably like 5 years younger than I am. So but yeah, I will say I love being there. I love being with family. I love the culture there. I will say it's similar to Manhattan, where it's like, again, like things are closer together. Like it smells, it's dirty, it's but it's not foreign from what I realized when I came to Manhattan.
Definitely want to ask, like, what's a project that you really want to get done, or like a show you want to call?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna answer that in 2 ways. Because I believe that those are 2 different questions, and
they are. I'm just letting you like pick and choose your own adventure here.
So choose your own ending.
Yeah, choose your own adventure here, and then we'll get into like where you're going next.
Yeah. So you asked, what project do you want to do, and like what and then like what show do I want to call next? I'd love to do Carmen in general, or just like any Puccini in general. I'd love to do Carmen, just because of the heavy amount of chorus involvement in it, and Puccini, just because I just love Puccini. I think it's really great. So that's the stage management side of things. But project wise, I'd love to get more into my photography and my videography in general. Those are 2 things that I just really thoroughly want to dive further into. I feel like I have to, just because I do all these things in stage management. And then I feel like I get to use a different part of my brain when I do videography or photography. But like very much, I'd love to get into documentary making. Those are things that I would just really thoroughly love to get into. I'd like to think that I'm decent at it, but also I think that's like a level of storytelling that I really, really thoroughly appreciate. Like a form of media that I can really consume just super duper well. And so yeah, I mean, like any kind or whatever, especially ones that like like pertain to Asians, or just ones that I believe in. And so yeah, that's like those projects like very much for me. And so yeah, that's
okay. And then before we wrap up, where can people find you, and like what's your next project?
My next project is in Savannah. That's my next gig in August, and then like I'm still navigating what my next season is like. It kind of looks promising, and I'm really excited for it. We'll figure that out whenever we get there, but I have to figure out some contracts here and there, but that'll be that. And then you can follow me on juliusdsanchez.com, and Julius D. Sanchez is my handle on Instagram. I also have Julius D. Sanchez. Oh, so I lied. JDS Studio. JDS_studio in my Instagram, and that's where you can find me.
And you can always find him hosting this podcast regularly. Yes. This is a little weird, but I thought it'd be great for everybody to kind of get to know who they're listening to, and just have fun with the rest of what he has to offer, especially in this podcast, because it's really cool. And I know that we both have loved working with him this entire season.
Yeah,
he's very good at his job, and he's very good at I mean, I could tell, you're a very personable stage manager.
Thanks.
And I think it translates very well into this podcast as well.
Thanks. That means a lot. I do believe, a stage management mentor mentioned this, is that like the business is the people. Like what we do is incredibly important, especially paperwork wise and communicating. But at the end of the day, it's the people. It's the people that are on stage and backstage, and the people that are around you. And that's, I try to emulate that as best I can. And I've had some really shitty stage managers in my life, and I've had some really, really amazing stage managers in my life. And I try to emulate that, and it means a lot that we can do this here, and we can create art here.
Sweet. And that wraps up this episode.
Yeah.
Yes. Do we end with a hug again?
Yeah, hell yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Thanks so much, you guys. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode. We release episodes every 3rd and 5th Tuesday of every month. If you enjoyed this one, please like, comment, share, subscribe, or follow. If you'd like to join us for future episodes, reach out to wearyellowproudly@gmail.com. Once again, this is Wear Yellow Proudly's Through Our Lens, conversations with Asians and Asian Americans. I'm your host, Julius Sanchez, and we will see you on the next episode.